everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today we are going to do the final part of our buddy colour with Helina from the Colouring Zone. So we've got 3 elements left to do in this page and we are going to bash through and get it done and make our picture complete and pretty. So we've got 3 elements we're going to tackle today. We have our butterflies that are dotted about around the sides here. We have these extra leaves and petals around the outside, and of course we have our little foxy friend in the middle. So I'm going to start with the butterflies. And we're at the stage now where there's quite a lot of colour in the picture and we want everything to tie in nicely. I am going to keep the fox traditional colours, so I want to tie the butterflies in with that and also the pencils that we've been using up till this point. So the colours we're going to use for the butterflies are 2 pencils that we've been using previously, which is the golden yellow and the orange circuit. And in addition to that, I've pulled in 2 red pencils as well. I have common or garden red, and I also have mahogany as well. And again, I'm just going to show you these in the swatch book so that you can pick out similar colours if you're using different pencils to the Crayolas. So here is our red pencil, so it's got a slightly pinky tone, and that's one of the things about the Crayola pencils, there really doesn't seem to be a true red. And the mahogany here is a slightly darker shade, so we're going to work these 2 together to create a little bit of variety. So let's make a start. I'm going to start with this big dude up in this corner here. In order to make sure this looks interesting, I'm going to use the red round the outside, and for the body here, I might even pull in a little bit of brown as well for the bodies here. So let's start off with our red pencil and get a layer of that down. And then with the mahogany, I'm going to go in to make this a bit richer. Around the areas where we've got some hatching here, these little marks. And then back to the red, we'll build this up. So already I'm feeling I'm not really enjoying this colour, so I'm going to bring in another pencil. And this is going to be a brown pencil, and it is cocoa. And again, I can show you that here as a swatch. So the cocoa is quite a warm brown. Yep, so we're going to stick this cocoa pencil in as well and see how we get on here. And again, I'm just leaving that right hand side a little bit lighter with the reds. Yeah, that's better. Okay, happy with that. So we're going to go back to the red now, and I'm going to go around the outline of this butterfly, around these outside here parts. So I've got a wee doggy update for you as well. Jock has been to the vet on multiple occasions since the last video. And finally he is on the mend. He burst his stitches and he had an infection in his surgery site. So we've had lots of antibiotics, and the vet removed 1 stitch, which was the one closest to his meat and 2 veg, shall we say. And that seemed to make him a lot more comfortable, and the vet just felt that it was doing more harm than good. Hopefully now we are on the mend. We are going back to the vet again in a couple of days. And hopefully that will be him on the road to recovery. The wound does seem to be, healing up. It is knitting together, which is good. But it's just, yeah, it's been quite a lot for him. It was only supposed to be a fairly minor and simple surgery, but it's just not turned out that way. But if Jock's going to have anything weird going on, then, you know, he's the dog to do it. That's just him. He gets all the weird stuff. So I'm taking this mahogany about halfway round these areas. So I've got a line starting here. It's quite difficult to see just now because I'm just putting the pencil down, but as we build it up, that should pop out a bit more. And then if I hop back to my red now, I can start to blend this at the point, just overlap with the mahogany slightly and start to build up some colour here because we want this to be fairly vibrant. I'm just going a wing at a time. 1 wing at a time. Yeah, so with Jock, hopefully in the next, I would say probably week and a half, we want to get him back out and exercising. I just want to build up this mahogany a bit more now. He has not been out at all apart from in the garden, and when we do get back to exercising it'll be short lead walks only. Jock's not great on the lead. It kind of makes him a little bit miserable, obviously. Being an ex-working dog, very rarely have you got your dog on the lead, and it's usually because they're going to the vet. Eventually we'll get back out to running about because he's still not supposed to be running about, but it's kind of impossible because Jock runs everywhere. And I suppose that's one of the downsides, although he's an older dog, he's still a very active and fit dog. I mean, he's not ancient or anything for a collie, but he's not a young dog anymore. Okay, in this back part, just because this wing's in behind, I'm going to build up the red here, but I'm going to put some mahogany down on the top of it just so it looks slightly darker than the part this part in front here. Get that red down. And then I'll grab my mahogany here. Even if it just looks a little bit more muted. Okay, so just to add a bit of depth, I am going to go and grab my violet purple pencil that we've used before. And down in this bottom part especially, I just want to pop some of that in there, and maybe we'll pop a little bit in here. So again, this is more of like a shadow than anything else. Okay, and now we're going to jump over to our yellow and our orange colours here. So I think I'm going to pop red in these middle parts here, these two little circles. Now you can use as much creative license as you like here. If you want these different colours, then obviously go for it. It might be nice with a pop of purple in there. And just like we did with the flowers, I'm going to stick down some of the golden yellow in here. And then we're going to grab our orange over the top there. And then we can build up our yellow colour here. Nice and vibrant. Look at that. That looks pretty good. And we'll just blend it in with this colour down here with the orange. Now in the back part here, I'm going to start with the orange this time, and I'm going to use that as my base layer. Just because, again, I want this to look slightly darker because it's tucked a wee bit in behind. So if I use one layer of the orange and then go back with the yellow, it's just going to make it look slightly different to the ones on the front part here. And we can keep alternating these pencils until we get the shade that we like. There we go, that's looking a bit better. For this large section here, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to pull this orange colour fairly far up and then work in the yellow again. I really like this shade of yellow, it's a lovely colour. And we can just blend that in gently there. Again, remember, keep a mid pressure. We don't want to be pressing really hard here because we want to be able to build this pencil up, because that's what we need to do to get the colour to pop out. Now with these bottom sections, just to add a little bit of variety, I am going to take the orange pencil and I'm going to line the bottom, oh dear, and I'm going to line the bottom edge of each section quite aggressively. So pressing quite hard there. And I'm going to keep that line fairly thin. So less than half of each section, and then fill in with my yellow again. So I'm not really wanting to blend in here. I want that line to be really obvious. But because we've pressed hard with the orange pencil, then that's an advantage of these pencils. You know, the fact that they don't blend at the drop of a hat actually helps with things like this. And I'm going to use the orange to fill in these parts at the top here. Oh dear, I've got a broken leg again. I'm not doing very well today. And there's two tiny little dots there, and I'm going to leave them white. Those two little circles. Okay, so you can see there that those butterflies are standing out, but they're still kind of blending in, sort of. I'm going to use the same technique and the same combination of pencils for all the butterflies, but I'm just going to flip the colours round, so some might have a yellow outline and then red in the middle. So I'm not going to be doing anything different, but I'll just carry on and we will see if we can get around all these butterflies. So this large one here, I think will have the yellow on the outside, and I might keep this really pale actually. And I think we'll use orange for the body here. Okay, I don't want it to be too washed out, so I'm going to grab another orange pencil, and this is orange. They're, you know, no fancy names here. So this is quite a vibrant colour, and it's this one here. This is the one that we're using just now. So that should give us a nice amount of contrast here. And I just want to pop this in the body. Sharpen this as well. I'm not doing very well for sharpening pencils today. I don't know what's going on. So I'm filming this on a Wednesday, which is my day off in inverted commas. When I say day off, I mean I don't work my proper job on a Wednesday, and it's basically my cave day. This is where I do all my catching up and filming and one thing and another. So it's a bit of an easier day in one sense, but on the other hand, it's still obviously a very busy day. But it's quite nice to be sitting colouring just before 9 in the morning, so I'm not complaining. I can think of worse ways to spend a Wednesday morning. Alright then, so I think what we'll do here is we will employ the orange and the red together, and we will get the brightest part in this centre area. So just like I did before, as I say, I want to keep these kind of uniform, and I know that might be a wee bit boring, but the main focal point of the picture is the fox. So while we want all this interest around the outside, I don't want an assault on my eyeballs when I look at the picture. So we'll start the red at the top and the orange at the bottom, and we'll get them to meet in the middle. Now it's really interesting, when you see a first layer of that red, it doesn't look that far off these pinky colours in the flowers. And this is the thing about these pencils. You just have to have that patience and build up the colour, because when we look at that compared to what was going on up here, it looks completely different. So let's see what we can do here. So I'm just overlapping that slightly with a really light hand, like really light, and then we can build up these colours. And this orange colour's fabulous. Just let that glide over into the red there, and then see, we'll start at the other end I find that technique easiest with these pencils. With other pencils, I would probably be, you know, I'd be overlapping the colours and I'd probably start near the middle. But just because these take a little bit of effort, I find it's better to go slowly, slowly, catchy monkey. So there we go. That's the kind of level of a readiness that we want. I'm going to have to get better with my technical terminology. You'd think after 4 years I would be a lot more technically astute when I'm describing things, but I tend to find that there's better describing words that aren't so scientific. And everybody knows what I mean as well. So let's do the same here. I'll do the same on the other wing as well. And again, there might be a little darker patch here, so I might grab the mahogany, just, you know, a little cheeky, and just pop some of that in there. Well, that hasn't made much of a difference. Okay, in that case then I'm going to grab the violet purple and I'm just going to make it into a shadow. So in this instance I'm using the violet purple as a shadow pencil. For these bottom parts here I'm going to use the two oranges together now, so the orange circuit and the actual orange, bona fide orange. So I think I want the lighter orange out here. This reminds me, there's another pencil in this set and I'm sure it's called Mango, and I could almost mistake this colour for Mango, but I seem to remember the Mango pencil being really, really washed out. I must look that up later for my own sanity. So I've brought that orange circuit halfway down. And just sticking the orange in now. Get it nice and vibrant. And at the base here, I'm going to keep these parts pale again and maybe pop a little bit of the circuit in here just because I've got this leaf curling around. Okay, for this part up here, I'm going to put the yellow in here, but I'm going to really make it vibrant so it pops out against the paler outline that we've got here. Yellow. Now when I'm doing these rings, I'm pressing really hard. You just ram the colour in there, because we don't need to do any blending or anything. All right, lovely jubbly. Moving on. So let's use, let's have an orange body here. I'm looking at it in some red. Okay, I feel here that this should have a very bright yellow outline, just to contrast, because there's, you know, we've got quite a lot of green in the purple here. And I feel that the yellow would stand out quite nicely against that. So again, lots of layers. I want to make this really bright and vibrant this time round. And also around these outer parts here, I'm going to make this vibrant, but in here I'm going to put it into one of the oranges. So lots of layers around this outside, but as I'm heading round back to the centre there, I'm just lightening up the pressure. And we'll blend in the orange there. Okay, so grabbing the circuit orange, the circuit orange, and we'll start to work that out through and blend that in there a little bit. And we'll start with red in here and take that most of the way up. And I'm just going to leave those edges white. Again, you don't need to be scared of the white of the paper. And then with the plain orange, I'm going to do the same in these wee diddly bits here and just leave a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. So all I'm doing is letting my pencil pressure up the closer I get to the tip. Just give you a very gentle, gradual fade. Now the trick is here to balance out how much white of the paper. You don't want too much white shown because it kind of makes it look unfinished. But you've got to leave enough so that you can see it. Okay, so let's just do these red. And I think maybe we actually might let's treat this all as one. Let's bring the red down and do similarly that we did to the outside of the wing. And I can use the bright orange on this top half here. So we've got these smaller butterflies now. There's two here and one up here. And I think we really need to just stick with a core colour for that. So this first one I'm going to use mostly red. Now with this, I'm going to use the purple. That was the purple, the violet purple, sorry, just to give us a little bit of depth here. So that's just one layer of the violet purple. That's enough to give us that little shadow effect over the hatch lines that are there, without actually taking away from the fact that we're predominantly using the colour red here. These are quite teensy weensy areas. Again, that, you know, there's no point in trying to get super fancy here, especially with Crayola pencils. We want impact rather than intricacy here, because there is enough intricacy in the picture anyway. So same again, I'm just going to pop that in at the base close to the body, build up that colour. And then I'm going to use some yellow here. And then take the orange and just put a little sort of accent in there, just a couple of flicks, just to sort of knock out that block colour, you know, stop it looking really flat and two-dimensional. So I'm thinking about colour placement here. There's quite a lot of yellow going on here, so I don't want this butterfly to be predominantly yellow. So I'm going to make this one predominantly yellow and make this one predominantly orange. So yellow is the base colour here. And like we did with the purple colour down here, we're going to use the orange in the same way. So a couple of flicks and we can start to build up our yellow colour now. For these little parts in here, I'm going to employ the same tactic like I did down here. Just leave that tiny white edge. Maybe colour the dots in though. I'll get some red bodies in here. And again, I'm just going to grab the mahogany and mute that down a little bit. And finally this one up here. So this time we use the red in here. And for the body, I'm going to use the mahogany. Alright, so that is all of our butterflies done. So you can see there's some nice pops of colour on the page there, and they don't look absolutely outrageous compared to everything that's going on. Of course, if you would like outrageous butterflies, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm trying to think about the parameters and the limitations of the pencils as well when I'm doing this. But that's greatly affected my colour choices here too. So the next thing I'm going to tackle is this bit round the outside. So this is all the loose leaves and petals. So I've been kind of thinking about this, and here's my theory behind it. If I just get in a little bit closer here, the little white dots I am going to leave white. Again, I don't think there's any problem with them. They are all over the fox as well. I'll probably have to put these in with a white Posca pen or something, but we can deal with that after. In terms of what's going on up here, there are two shapes in particular. These little leaf shapes that have got shading in them, that have got hatching in them, I'm going to make those leaves, and also these shapes that look suspiciously more leaf-like than petal-like, I'm also going to make those leaves as well. So those two types there are going to be green, and the rest of these little loose parts here I'm going to make into petals. I'm not going to make you sit through the entirety of this because it's going to be incredibly tedious. So for the leaves, I'm just going to randomly pick out, I'm literally going to pick the pencils at random, and I'm going to use the colours that we used in here. So that was all the sort of more turquoisey green colours, and I'll likely just employ one pencil for each and just use pressure to make some shading, because again these are tiny. So those pencils that we're talking about were the pine green, the tropical rainforest, the shamrock and the teal pencil. So I'll use them at random, and once I've gone round and done all that, I am going to do exactly the same with the petals, and again I'm just going to pick them at random. So I'm going to jump between all the other colours that we used for our flowers here. So that was the selection of pinks and purples, and what that's going to do is that is going to frame this really nicely round the outside here, and then we can get stuck into our fox. So deep breath and off we go. Okay, that was relatively painless. The next part maybe not so much. So again, if you're looking for a technique when you're doing something like this that's really repetitive and you're using specific colours and you're just block colouring, I find it easy just to have the pencils in my hand in a bunch and just whip them out one at a time. So let's pick out some colours here. So the orchid's pretty pale, so I'm not going to use that particular pencil. I'm going to use the violet purple. A jazzberry jam, which is what we use for our little, well that's quite pale as well, let's not do that. The raspberry pencil, which we used for our raspberries. The plum pencil, and I think I am going to use the jazzberry just for contrast, and perhaps the blue violet. I think the indigo on its own is going to stand out too much because it is going to look really blue, whereas we only really use the blue to help out the purple here. So I'm going to go with these colours here. We've got a little bit more to get round here. So you can see just by varying my pencil placement here, I'm getting a slightly different look, but it's very subtle. And there we go, that is the tedious part out of the way. We are all filled in round the outside. So that just leaves our little friend in the middle. So I've left the best to last, in my opinion. I think Helena would probably completely disagree with me on that one. But we're going to be using quite a range of pencils here, and this is by far, in terms of using Crayola pencils, this is by far going to be the most challenging part, to try and get that richness and the layers down, but also just to get fur detail in basically. So zoom in on our little buddy here. So in addition to the pencils that we've already been using for our butterflies, so I'll just remind you of those colours again. The colours that I'm going to be switching over and using with the fox is cocoa, mahogany, orange circuit, golden yellow, yellow and the plain orange as well. So they're all pencils that we've already used. Now, in addition to that, just for some of the paler parts of our little foxy friend here, I've got 3 extra colours, and again, I'm going to show you them here on my colour chart. So first of all, I have the almond, which is this slightly off-white colour, and I also have a peach colour as well, which again, very, very delicate, this shade here, and I have the yellow orange, which is next door to the orange circuit as well. We're kind of missing in this set of pencils a proper reddish brown colour, so basically we're missing a fox colour, so that's not very helpful, because if I just show you the browns here, you can see they're all very pale and washed out, and there's nothing with a significant amount of red in it. So by using this massive combination of pencils, we're going to create our foxy colour. So don't panic, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do this, and everything shall be a-okay. So the first thing we need to do here is put a base colour down on the sections. So one of the things I notice about this illustration is that the common red fox, it does have a white tip on its tail, and there's no indication here of this. So I am going to put that in myself. So the 2 main base colours that we want is the base colour for the paler areas, which in this case is going to be round his little eyes here and his little tufty bits, which are freaking adorable. And we're going to create the same effect on the tail area, and the rest we want that reddish brown colour. So for the pale areas I'm going to use the peach pencil, and for the rest of the body I'm going to put down mahogany. So very, very light layer, because we need to do a lot of layering here to give us the colours that we need. Barely enough, you know, so you can just see it on the paper and no more, because we have got work to do, my friends. So pop that down there. And I'm going to create this tail area as well. Now it doesn't stop dead in a line, so I'm just going to flick out some lines here and there. Again, that's going to be quite a gradual transition, but it's usually the thickest part of the tail, so that, you know, this sort of part here is where it tends to go back to the body colour. We do have quite a lot of foxes around. Obviously, as farmers, we're not exactly friends with them, but we tend to leave them be unless they're doing damage. And because we don't have any sheep anymore, we don't have to worry about them stealing lambs either. Okay, so for the rest of this now, I'm going to start up here. And again, the same thing, just a really light layer of this mahogany pencil. So we're very lucky here, because of the pose that the animal is in, we've got really good sections that we can work in, and it means we can do them apart at the time. And there's loads of sensible places to stop, like down here at the end of the nose, and this would be a section. So it becomes less overwhelming if you are not too familiar with this sort of idea. So let's pop this down, say just a really light layer. We don't need to do anything crazy here. And then we've got the leg that's tucked in here, the back leg. Super. Looks like he's having a really good snooze. Wee bit jealous, not gonna lie. So you can see that I'm trying to keep my pencil strokes in the direction of the way the fur's lying. And it just means if we do have any texture marks left that we weren't necessarily planning on, then they're not going to look too out of place. But again, because this is just a base layer, I wouldn't worry too much about it, honestly, because we're going to be going over this with lots of different colours. And there we go. Right, I'm quite happy that that is suitable there. So we're going to start with his hind leg. It's a good place as any. And I'm taking my orange pencil. Now, I'm thinking about the way that he's tucked in together. We do have some hatching to help us, but not a lot. So we want the lightest parts to look more a sort of orangey red colour rather than brown. So I'm taking my orange pencil here, and I'm going to pop this down on the apex of the curve here on this lightest part. And then with the mahogany pencil, I'm just going to blend in around those edges there. So we're kind of working around the outside of this orange area. And we're going to fill in the rest of the area with this mahogany. Now the next pencil I'm going to take is the cocoa pencil. And I'm going to start with my flicky motion. Now we're going to be flicking in the direction of the fur. That's quite important. And it doesn't have to be super accurate or anything like that. And you're only going to get so much in terms of contrast here. But just go with the cocoa. Now you do need a really sharp point for this. And we're going to head up into this orange area as well. We're going to keep it sparing up there though with the cocoa pencil. Turn the book as much as you need also, so that you can get your flicks going in the right direction. So sharp pencils all the way here. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the orange pencil on this top part where we put the orange down before. Now, when you're doing things like this, this is about ratios when you're working in each section. It's not going to be this part's going to be orange, this part's going to be brown. You have to be able to blend them together and layer them up. So, for example here, I would imagine that the light's hitting this part, so I'm going to have way more orange flicks on the top section of this hind quarter than I am of, say, the brown or the mahogany. And we'll bring it down a little bit. And now if we go back to the mahogany pencil, exactly the same thing. Okay, so you can see that we've covered quite a lot of the page, but if I just zoom in a bit more, you can see there's still lots of the white of the paper showing, and this is where we just need to build it up, and it's just a case of going back over and back over and back over to build up that richness that we want. And it's quite good actually, because it lets you tweak things. You know, if you think you've got too much of one colour in one part and not enough in another, then you can jump between your pencils, and it allows you to sort of adjust that slightly. So I do feel like I want a little bit of orange down here. Okay, so this is probably one of the most important parts I'm going to talk about now, and that is getting your shadows and your contrast. It's absolutely essential that we have contrast in this to make our fox look a little bit more 3D. So I'm going to employ the darkest brown I've got, which is unsurprisingly and unimaginatively called a dark brown. It's actually really close to the black pencil in this set. Black can be too stark though, and it tends to look very false in amongst all your other earthy tones, so dark brown's always a good shout. So what we need to do here is we need to work on the areas first of all that are tucked in, just like we did with our petals and our leaves, etc. So I'm going to work around here. You're not going to be able to see much texture the likes of in here, because you know, he's all sort of bundled up and tucked in. So I'm just going to make that as dark as I can, and then these parts that are disappearing in behind these wee tufts here, I'm going to pop some pencil in there. So not really concerned too much about texture at this point. So you can see how much this area is standing out now. Again, just in round these more sort of delicate areas, and then we can start to flick out from there. So I find it easier to turn the book here, just to make that transition a bit more gradual. And then along here, again, where there's actually hatch in there to let you know. So just going to kind of like almost put a line along there with the dark brown here, and then start flicking that out. Just very short lines, just so that it starts to blend in with what's going on with our other pencils. Okay, so I'm going to grab my orange pencil now, and I'm just going to add in a little bit more down here. And in this midsection here, a little bit more mahogany too. And I'm targeting specifically the areas where there's still a bit of the white of the paper showing, because although again we don't mind a little bit here and there, we don't want too much. Okay, so you can see there now, it does look as if the darker parts are down the bottom here. Again, maybe just grab the cocoa for this section here, maybe pop a little bit more in there, that's better. So we really get this feeling that this bit's tucked right in, you know, he's balled himself up so that he can get nice and cosy, but we can still tell that he's a red fox. So next I'm going to work on this little back section in here, and it's the same technique as we've used down here on the hind leg. We're just going to use the colours in a little bit different quantities here. So our main orange parts are going to be just in the middle here. So I'm going to get a little bit of this orange down, and off we go, working with this mahogany. And these darker sections, I'm just going to stick to mahogany and the dark brown. He's tucked away in there. So again, just working my way down that orange section, and I grab the cocoa. Just making sure we follow the grain of the fur growth here. So we're going to do a bit more work with the dark brown here, just because this area is a lot more in shadow. So in these parts here, just work our way around the edge here. Now there's a little bit of a fiddly bit in here, and the best thing to do is just layer up your pencils. So I'm going to put down a wee bit of orange, bearing in mind there's some mahogany there already. Bring that down there. So I'm just working my way through the pencils, orange, mahogany, cocoa, and then the dark brown. The dark brown is going to be the most featured pencil here because it's kind of like a little tight area. Get that in there. Bit of orange over the top. There we go. And we just keep going, working our way around here. Now in all these teeny tiny little gaps in here, I'm just going straight in with the dark brown. We're tucked so far in there, we don't need to worry about that too much. Okay, so moving on to this tail section now, we're going to have to be a wee bitty more careful here because we're going to have this much paler. So I'm just going to turn this slightly again. It's just easier for me to make these strokes go this way. So where I've got the peach matching up with the actual red of the fur, I'm just going to work on that section first. So I'm using upward strokes very lightly, and I'm just going to make this as natural as possible. So this doesn't need to, we don't want this to be uniform. So we're varying the length of the strokes. I'm just trying to follow some of those lines there. We're just going to build a little bit of this up first of all. So you can see that that's starting to stand out a little bit. Might even bring some of these a bit further up round here. And then we can just start to work this back the way towards his nose. And then the same with the orange. So we're trying to stick to the pattern that we've left with the mahogany pencil now. And I want quite a high concentration of orange in this middle part here. And then the same thing, start putting my strokes the other way. So when we're working towards the tail, we're going up the way. So it's looking quite natural there, you know, we don't have this dead line across. And now we just go back to what we were doing before. And we'll work on these darker sections in here as well. In all the nooks and crannies. So I'm going to use the dark brown quite sparingly here, because I feel like this is the area that would probably see the most light. So I'm kind of sticking more or less to the outline of the face here, down the snout. So I'm just going to pencil a line in there and keeping my fricks. All about the fricks. Keeping those flicks pretty light. Good grief. Down around his little nose here as well. That's going to be fairly dark there. And we can use the cocoa to blend this out a little bit. So more cocoa around here. Okay, now for the actual tail tuft, this might be quite difficult to see. I can't zoom in, that's about as far in as I can zoom. You want these colours very light and delicate. Now the almond's almost non-existent, but that's kind of the idea. So I'm actually going to use this very sparingly. And I'm just going to put it, I'm just literally sticking in random lines here. And it's just to give that tail fur a bit of depth. And it's not, you know, like just the stark white of the paper. And then with the peach colour, I'm going to use that kind of as my shadow colour. So in round the places where it's tucked in, I'm just going to slap down some of that there. Now this isn't going to be hugely noticeable, but that just sets off. So you want to leave quite a lot of the paper there. You don't actually want to be colouring it in, so to speak. And it's very, very delicate, and it's probably quite difficult to see on the camera, but it will make all the difference to your picture. And it's the same story here as well. Okay, for the face sections now, we're going to use the peach here in some of the hatched areas. And again, it's just a couple of flicks. It's nothing crazy, and it's just to give that illusion that the fur is, well, furry. Maybe a little bit darker in beside his ear. Doing really well today, aren't I? And then just going to take the almond pencil. Oh lordy. And I'm going to blend in round the areas. Round the actual eye area, I'm going to leave that because it usually is an area that's a bit paler in general. And we can do the same on this side here. So peach pencil in some of these areas, and then just a little scribble round there as well. And if you want to line all the way down the sides of the snout, you can do. That's absolutely fine. And we're going to tackle his little face now as well. So again, this is most front facing, and assuming that there has been there's some light hitting there. So we want more orange in this area than anywhere else. So we're working our way up the nose here just with the orange and the mahogany. Nice sharp points in our pencils. So I've kept the orange quite concentrated down here, apart from this little bit at his nose. And I want to keep that a little bit paler, just so it looks like there's a little bit of light reflecting off there. Bring this all the way down. And on his ears, we're going to have more orange on this side. So again, just follow some of those lines there. They're very convenient, very helpful. And we're going to lay off the cocoa and the mahogany. We're not going to, the cocoa and the dark brown, we're not going to use as much of that. But you can see I'm just working my way around the edge here. And we'll use less mahogany in this centre part here. Back with the orange. So really working these two pencils for this section. So you can see I'm trying to leave a slightly paler section of orange there. And now we're going to join these sections up. I'm relying quite heavily on the orange pencil here. And we're going to do the same in this here. So we're going to leave it paler up on this top edge. So literally less pencil there than down the bottom here. Okay, now for this last section here, we need to try and think of this as a whole. And we need to think about where we want our lightest parts to be, you know, where there might be a little bit of sunlight hitting. So naturally it's going to come up round from this orange part in the middle. So I'm just going to add a little bit more orange there. And I would say probably here, all the way across this top part of the head. And then we're going to taper that down to go with the shape of the body. So our orange is going to come around here. Again, if you're using a really light hand, you can be quite scrappy with your pencil strokes. And I'll probably taper it off about here. So we're almost making that into the same shape as the actual part of the fox here. Maybe bring it a bit further up around the top here, but we can play with this. And this is just really to give ourselves a guideline. So in behind the ears here, I'm taking the mahogany. We'll start adding in some of that round here. Again, just the same technique as before, overlapping slightly with our orange areas. And we can start to build this up a little bit here. So again, just adding a little bit of mahogany in here. And we can work on this underside part too. So I'm going to flick some orange in there, just very lightly, all the way down to the tail. And then I'm going to get to work with this mahogany pencil and darken down these areas in here. So this part in here is going to be very similar to what was going on down the bottom here. And we're going to head back with our cocoa pencil. So again, in this really tucked in area, we want to get that nice and rich in there. So you can get some layers down there, and then we'll start to flick out. So we've got this nice distinction between the ear, the part that's tucked in, and then the hind leg. And we're going to do the same at the bottom here, and then we can join this part up in the middle and start to work our way up. So we'll get some mahogany in down at the base here, maybe a little bit more orange. And then in with the dark brown. Start to work around this curve here. So we can start working our way up now. Get some more mahogany in here. And we're starting to head into that area where we want some more orange. That's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to take my mahogany pencil and I'm very gently going to work my way around the top half of his back here. There, so that's looking quite good. It's looking quite rich and dark, and we've still got a nice contrast here between this hind leg part and the actual, well, I suppose it's what his bottom? I don't know. Not quite sure how this anatomy works, but okay, so let's continue our little voyage here around this top edge. So more or less solid colour. Don't worry about flicky lines in these parts in here. Don't make the job difficult for yourself. So I'm introducing a little bit of cocoa here as well. Trying to keep this in shot. Okay, I'm terrible for moving this about, but it's just one of those pieces, because we're working in a circular motion and I've got a dodgy elbow, it's easier just for me to move the book. So I'm terribly sorry if any of you are feeling seasick. It's not my intention. Now I'm deliberately kind of avoiding the orange part just now. I'm not quite sure what intensity I want. I would like to get the rest of the colour round about, and then we can build up if need be. If you go in too hard and too fast, it can be very difficult to correct that if you decide you don't like it or it doesn't look right. So better to go slowly, slowly catchy monkey to get the results that we want. So I'm just pulling the mahogany down round here now. And I'm going to leave that quite pale for now. And as we come down here, I'm going to transition from using more mahogany than orange to the opposite way around, so that it's going to tie in with this part here. So if I start working my way up with my orange to here, make the transition. So I'm using a bit of cocoa here, not much. And I really want, in my mind, the dark brown stops at this point and it heads backwards. There isn't any down this edge here, just as the image sort of curls round. So again, a few flicky lines just to sort of help blend it in with the other colours we're using. Maybe one or two here, but not much. Okay, so back with my orange now. I just want to make this a little bit more intense behind his ears as well. Add some more in round here. Okay, so now exclusively with the orange pencil, just going to start building up some colour in this middle part here so that we can tie all of this together. And I feel like this part here should be more intense, and with the mahogany here. Now I do want a little bit more colour here, but I don't want it to be as bright as the part that we've got at his backside. So I'm just going to go easy with this orange pencil here. Now at this point, this is all down to preference and just about doing this by eye. If I zoom out here, you can see that the picture looks finished, but it's up to you as to what level you want to take your pencil strokes to. For me personally, I feel as if we're still a little bit pale, so I'm just working away with my orange here. I just feel as if it looks a little bit unfinished. So I'm just going to bring this down. I do want to keep this paler part right at the top of the head here, but I want it to be a lot more subtle. Okay, I think I'm good at that. So there we have it. There is our finished little foxy friend in Circle of Life. I have thoroughly enjoyed colouring this page, and I always get satisfaction when I can show people that you don't need expensive pencils to create really nice artwork. You've just got to have a bit of patience and good pressure control with your pencils. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing this picture come together. And if you haven't been over and seen Helina's video yet over in the colouring zone, the top link down in the description will take you to her YouTube channel, and you can see what lovely delights she has been doing with our little foxy friend. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I always appreciate it very much. Please stay safe, take care of each other. Bye bye for now.